little bit of law enforcement and sometimes split second decisions if you have to make it. These are most of us, all of us in this room have different shipping, but I can assure you, all of us have been in that situation where that gone out. I mean, your blood pressure is up and you're thinking about what do I have here? What do I need to do? How to do this right? So thank you for giving yourselves the opportunity to see this. It'll be very interesting. Major Carter's going to give you some information first, some statistics that you're going to find very interesting. And then how do you want to get a sign-in sheet? Okay, so we'll get that done. And I think you're going to find this very, very useful, and very interesting, and very real in a safe environment though. It's in a design. So with that, I leave you with Major Carter.
Real quick, nobody has any firearms or weapons, right?
Yeah.
No, we're just one night, because as you see, we're not armed either, we have nothing to
So you
say.
didn't say this for show and tell.
Yeah, this is nothing. We're training to make sure no knife in the office, nobody comes in here with a firearm or a knife or anything, just because the situation get really real on the kind of thing. Oh, you Major.
All right, good. Good evening. Thank you for joining us again. Major Carter. I'm currently Major for Investigation. I'll do a quick introduction of myself as far as my fortunate experience here in 18 years. As I said, I'm Major of Investigation. I spent most of my career has been in patrol as an officer, supervisor, commander, and a major. I've served on the SWAT team, currently a member of the SWAT team, K9 handler and supervisor. Also honor guard, general instructor, use of force instructor, and defensive tactical instructor. And also to teach some officer safety, officer tactics, officer tactics. So there's a few things. And then prior to this, I also taught high school at the Minor Jackson High School. So I did that. So I'm gonna say that, laid that out for you. This is just a quick outline of what we're gonna do. Don't get intimidated by what you see there. Just some things that we touch on. So let me just tell you really briefly how this started. This is a part of what we call the discussion. And this was started about 3 years ago from the George Floyd riots. One of the detectives from Homeland Security, Miami-Dade County, came up with an idea to bring the community in, the police, so we have an opportunity to talk, exchange ideas, exchange feelings, talk very real about some of the issues that the community is experiencing. We get a chance to talk about some of the things that we were dealing with. The discussion turned out to be very beautiful. 3 years later, we're still doing it. And matter of fact, May 25th, we have a group coming through that's going to sit through the same class. Each group is a little different. Each group is a little different. We had a group of teachers that came in. We had college athletes that came in to the course. Community activists that came in and took the course. So we've had a variety of groups that have come through. So the idea is to just peel the curtains back a little bit, give everybody an opportunity to see what it is that we do. And then obviously the community gets a chance to share some of their questions. And there's some questions that come up, real life questions that come up. For example, can an officer tell me to get out of the car? And so we go through all of those things, all those questions that come up, and we deal with those things. So these are the topics that we're going to kind of touch on. Some of them we dive into a little bit deeper simply because it's going to assist you with some of the things you're going to be seeing and doing as members of the CIB. Some other things is just kind of perspective types of things. But the hope is that it all ties together for you to kind of understand what we're going with. So we'll see where we're at the end. I'm sorry. Very quick history. Sir Robert Peel, purpose of law enforcement, search and seizure, Fourth Amendment, qualified immunity, human performance factors, DWC, things to consider, de-escalation, stats, and frequently asked questions if we have time to get to that at the end. Please, as I'm going through, if you have questions, comments, something you want to talk about, this is what this forum is kind of for. I'll speed through some things, I'll slow down through some others. If I'm going too fast, just please, just, hey, go around just a little, and then we'll get it slowed down. But I really want to leave time so we have opportunity to really get into the. All right, so start briefly with the history of law enforcement. Law enforcement had its beginnings in the 1630s and 1650s in the colonial times. And in Boston and New York, obviously, they had some commerce things that were going on and needed a enforcement arm to protect that commerce. Something that comes up often, moving into the 1700s, the slave patrols in South Carolina. And the primary goal of the slave patrols were to recapture runaway slaves, but it was also to enforce, also to prevent slave uprisings so that the slaves wouldn't revolt. And then around in the 1860s, slavery was abolished, the Reconstruction era took place, and then militia groups formed, which helped to enforce the Black codes and some of the other laws that have been put in place to try to keep the newly freed slaves in check. Some of those militia groups were obviously KKK is one of those groups, one of the more well-known groups, but there were other groups that had formed, especially in the South. The first police department was founded in Boston in 1838. And then we move into the early 20th century, and this is the time when law enforcement was utilized to enforce racially biased policies towards Blacks and other minority groups. And it was especially there was a particular Black eye for law enforcement during the civil rights movement because we have lots of images, very heartbreaking and heart-wrenching images from the 1960s, which include peaceful protesters being beaten and punched and bloodied eyes and noses, dogs being utilized to break, to attack peaceful protesters. We have water hoses. So there was all types of negative images that were attached to law enforcement. Law enforcement has had a very dark history in the United States, and they were utilized for things that really law enforcement wasn't geared for, but that was the tool that was being used. And unfortunately, now we see today why people have some of the misgivings they have for law enforcement. As I told you, we talk very real when we do this discussion, but we do want to make sure that we present this very balanced, a very balanced presentation of law enforcement. This is transparency. Now, there were three eras during law enforcement. There was a political era, the reform era, and the community era. The political era was one that was characterized by very close connections of political organizations and law enforcement. And consequently, there was widespread corruption. Widespread corruption with law enforcement and with politicians. And this is also a time when we had gangs that were prevalent in New York and Chicago. The reform era was the late 19th century to early 1920s. This was a move to try to separate politics, the political organizations from policing. It was a time when they were trying to standardize law enforcement and make a move towards more professionalism. And anytime you start to standardize, you do move towards professionalism. During the reform era, some things that took place were police academies starting to form. Often recruits were being sent to police academies. Recruits were now being tested, psychological and intelligence testing, which are things that we see today. We saw during that time, we moved towards a more scientific approach to investigation, forensic science, such as fingerprint and things of that nature. DNA hadn't come along, DNA hadn't come along at that point, but the forensics that they were presenting at that time was kind of the forerunner for what we have today. Went to military drills and training. That's where we kind of get our paramilitary roots from, and in the standardization of arrest and interrogation techniques. All of this was in a way to try to make law enforcement more uniform, and in that way it becomes more professional, because now it can actually be regulated. The last era, which is the era that we're in today, is community era, and now police agencies are now looking to try to collaborate with the community. And it's an effort to try to marry our police strategies and our decisions with the interests of the community. So that's where we're at today as far as the history is concerned. So Robert Peel is considered the father of modern policing. He established the London Metropolitan Police Force in 1829, and he developed 3 core ideas and 9 principles. We're not going to go through all the 9 principles. If you want to highlight something, I'm going to show you something, because I want to double back to the militias and to the slave patrols. So first goal is preventing crime and catching criminals, and not catching criminals. His idea was, let's stop crime before it happens. Now we don't need to use force. Now we don't have to arrest people. We don't have to incarcerate anyone. We can just prevent them, deter them from doing that, and maybe move them to do something else. The second core idea was preventing crime by earning public support. And the third was earning public support through community principles. His idea was that police officers are part of the community, and being part of the community, they should garner the support of the community, and that they should be members of the community, acting as members of the community with the special role and function of the law enforcement officer. So his policing principles, there were 9 principles. We're going to touch on this. I'm going to mention 5 simply because you can see those principles in effect today with what police agencies are trying to do today, particularly your police agency, North Miami Police Department. Number 1, to prevent crime and disorder. That's the number 1 issue. If we can prevent crime, then we don't have victims. If we can prevent crimes, then we don't have victims. Obviously, crime and disorder kind of go together. The second piece to this is dependence on the public approval for their existence. The police department cannot function without the public's approval, without the public's support. And that was the second one of his principles. The third principle was securing the willing cooperation of the public. And later on, we'll talk about some numbers, but there's roughly 690,000 law enforcement officers in the United States. There's about 340 million people who live in the United States. If everybody in the United States decided that they wanted to no longer follow the law and that they were going to do whatever they wanted to do, there's no way that law enforcement can stop them. There's no way that law enforcement can stop them. Law enforcement is dependent on people saying, I want to follow the law. We know by stats that there's a small percentage of the population that commits all of the crimes. So with that being said, then it's just a matter of trying to impact that small percentage. Number 5, to seek and preserve public favor. And this one is important because during the political era, unfortunately, they were seeking and preserving public favor through bribes and things of that nature. So he goes on to say that it's not pandering to the public opinion, but it's by ready exercise of courtesy and friendly good humor, and by readily offering individual sacrifice and protecting and preserving life. In essence, it means being good, officer friendly, being kind, being considerate to the people that we service, and at the same time being prepared to walk through those schoolhouse doors to stop an active shooter. Being willing and prepared to go into a backyard in the middle of the night to stop somebody from breaking into someone's house. That is what the essence of number 5 is, and it's the essence of what most law enforcement agencies are trying to do today. And the 6th one, and this is the one that most impacts you all, because this is one of the things that's probably the most popular thing that you're going to have, the most frequent thing that you're going to deal with is use of the force. And his idea was that use force only when necessary, when persuasion, advice, warning, all of these things were insufficient in getting the person cooperating. In other words, we only want to use the force that is necessary in order to accomplish our lawful objectives. Condense his principles down, condense his ideas down, it's legitimate. Policing by consent. It's policing by consent. We can only police if we have the consent of the people. And that legitimate, and he indicates that the legitimacy of policing in the eyes of the public is based upon a general consensus of support that follows transparency about their powers, their integrity in exercising those powers, and their accountability for doing so. I'm gonna take everything that's in bold, I'll reduce it down to one word: integrity. Because it takes integrity to be transparent, and it takes integrity to be accountable. That means there's an honesty in the mistakes, and there's honesty in the things that we're doing. And there's also a raising of the hand saying that we made a mistake and this is how we're going to correct it. You'll notice that part of one of our values, one of the department's values is integrity. We hold that one very dear because that one links everything else together. The five purposes of law enforcement is enforcing laws, which I think goes without saying, investigating prevention of crime, helping to ensure domestic peace and tranquility, and providing the community with needed enforcement related services. Now, the reason I have that there is because I want to double back to slave patrols and the militias, because this one comes up oftentimes when we have our discussion. Obviously, people want to go back to the slave patrol. And yes, the slave patrols did have there are some components from slave patrol that is apparent in law enforcement. But then again, I could take you down to a security, where a security officer is working, and there's components of what a security officer does that law enforcement does. However, in no way does what the slave patrols did and what the militias did reflective of law enforcement, because, and this is why we talked a little bit about Appealing principles. Appealing principles look at the public's consent. Well, I'm sure the newly freed slaves and the slaves weren't in compliance with or weren't in consent with what the slave patrols and the militia. So it was only one part of the community that was being that had input into what was going on there. Whereas with law enforcement, in theory, all segments of the community have a say as to what happens. All parties are sitting at the table to discuss the issues of the community. And so that becomes the difference. And I do want to try to bring some separation between the slave patrol. It's an interesting conversation. And yes, you can see some things, some components there, but in no way are the slave patrols and the militias part of law enforcement, not even a reflection. Again, as I said, as we're doing this, if you have discussion, if you have a point you want to make, and say, please do not hold back. This is what this is for. This is why we do this. Okay. Now, police activity falls under two categories. Usually, law enforcement is doing one of two things. They're either searching for something, or they're seizing something. Most of what you're going to probably be looking at are seizures, and we'll talk about seizures in a second. Both of those activities are governed by the Fourth Amendment. This is why we spend a lot of time teaching on the Fourth Amendment, talking about the Fourth Amendment, particularly in North Miami, but I'm sure in every agency they spend lots of time talking about the Fourth Amendment because most of our activity is governed towards that. So a quick definition of a search: anytime a government agent intrudes into an area where there's a reasonable expectation of privacy, that is a search. Where a citizen has a reasonable expectation of privacy, that is a search. Be it a vehicle, be it a house, apartment, your person, your clothes, that is a search. That becomes a search. And because of that, there are certain protections that are guaranteed to the citizen. A seizure occurs anytime we utilize force to either force or a show of force to restrict your liberties. In other words, we restrict your freedom to move, or your actual freedom by taking you to jail. Now, a seizure can also occur when you utilize force on someone. deadly force is considered the greatest form of seizure that you can use because that's a permanent seizure. That person has died. And again, these are things that you all will probably see more of in regards to the search. So one of the things that we always spend a lot of time talking about in our use of force, defensive tactics courses, is Tennessee v. Garner and Graham v. Connor. These case laws are fundamental to law enforcement use of force. I've read many case laws regarding use of force, and all of them refer back to at least one of these cases or both of these cases. Tennessee v. Garner was in 1985. A young man committed a property crime, fled from the police. The police stopped him. He tried to get him to stop. He wouldn't stop. They ended up shooting and killing him. In Tennessee at the time, it was legal to use deadly force on a fleeing felon. Fortunately, this young man was 16 years old and there was no sign of him having a weapon. His family took it to court, filed a civil suit, and they won the civil suit. And this is how we came with, we arrived at Tennessee v. Garner. And what this case determined was that police officers cannot use deadly force against every offense. There has to be a severity of the crime. There has to be a severity of the crime. There has to be a threat to the officer or to the community. So, for instance, somebody going to 7-Eleven and stealing a case of beer does not warrant an officer using deadly force on that person. However, a person who's just committed multiple murders or has shot at multiple people and now is trying to flee, by case law, that person has now become a danger not only to the officer, but he's also a danger to the rest of the community as she has already killed or hurt numerous people. In that instance, if deadly force was used by Tennessee v. Garner, that situation would be one that would be covered. And we'll talk about qualified immunity in a little bit down the road, because I know that's something else that has come up in the news and it's something that's been discussed. So Tennessee v. Garner usually deals more with deadly force encounters. Graham v. Connor was a case where the courts got a chance to, before Graham v. Connor, it was more good intentions. If the officer has good intentions, then we're okay with whatever force they use. After Graham v. Connor, a gentleman was having a diabetic episode. He was looking for looking for orange juice in order to try to get himself stabilized. Officers saw that, they thought that he was committing a robbery or because he ran out of the store. They followed him, they stopped him, they utilized force on him that was unnecessary and unreasonable. He didn't die, but he did get injured severely enough where he had to go to the hospital. They filed civil suit, and as a result of that civil suit, we now have Graham v. Connor, and there's a 3-pronged test of reasonableness that the courts ask. 3 questions that must be answered. Was the subject an immediate threat to the officer or to the community? What was the severity of the crime? And was the subject attempting to escape? No longer can an officer use good intentions as his reasoning for use of force. Now that deals with seizures. Terry v. Ohio deals with search and seizure with both instances. Terry v. Ohio, 1968 was a landmark case which basically established stop and frisk laws, and it also established what reasonable suspicion is. Reasonable suspicion, and prior to this, there really was a hunch. I see this guy walking down the street. I have a hunch that something's not right. He's walking by this store. Well, there was no legal standard to stop him. Either he had to be committing a crime in your presence, or you had to wait until he committed a crime. Terry v. Ohio, in this instance, police officers saw 2 gentlemen standing in front of the store late at night. The store was closed. Looks like they were casing the store. They were looking inside of the store. The store was closed. He stopped and he investigates them. He finds out one gentleman had a gun. He was a convicted felon. Ended up going to jail. They tried to dismissed the case based on the fact that it was an illegal search. The courts then established the fact that the officer had reasonable suspicion to believe that a crime was taking place, was about to take place, or is taking place. So with that being said, we have the grounds now, the legal standard now for reasonable suspicion. As a result of reasonable suspicion, anytime we have reasonable suspicion, we have the right to stop that person and investigate. So what's the difference between reasonable suspicion and probable cause? Reasonable suspicion, there's reasonable belief or reasonable suspicion to believe that a crime is about to take place, has taken place, is taking place. Probable cause, we have reasonable belief to believe that a crime has taken place. And we know that a crime is taking place. We have all of the facts. We have enough facts in place that would lead a reasonable person to believe that a crime is taking place. So one, reasonable suspicion is enough for us to make a stop. Probable cause is enough for us to make an arrest. Frisk versus the search. A frisk is a cursory search, which is only for weapons. However, during search for weapons, if you can articulate the contraband that you find, that officer can articulate the contraband that they find, now they can also take the contraband. But ideally, frisk is simply for weapons, is for the protection and the safety of the officer. A search is a more detailed search. So now we're looking for weapons and we're looking for contraband. Usually searches happen incident to arrest. Investigative stop versus consensual encounter. Investigative stop, there's a reason to believe that something has happened or is about to happen. And as a result, this person is not free to leave. They must stay until the officer finishes their investigation. A consensual encounter, the person is free to leave anytime they want to. They're free to leave anytime they want to. Now, we're going to talk about qualified immunity, and we're going to take a 5-minute break or a 2-minute break. Whatever you guys need more, but I think we have some more in the back, and we'll get started again. So qualified immunity is something that's come up, and it's been very prevalent in the news. People want to get rid of qualified immunity for officers. Qualified immunity was originally established to protect the officer and to protect the community. Qualified immunity was to protect the officer from baseless allegations and accusations, things that would slow them down from doing their job. And actually, it wasn't for just for officers, it was for any government official. It just, now we're talking about officers here. It also was to protect the community, to protect them from officers who were doing illegal, who were abusing their power. Now, before 1961, you could not file a civil lawsuit for violation of your civil rights. 1961, there was a Monroe v. Pate was a very it's very involved, so I won't give you a description of this. It was a very bad case. Police officers were acting off of the good intentions, the same not reasonable, but good intentions, and those good intentions were not good. It was a very, very bad case, and officers were sued for violating the citizens' civil rights. That occurred in 1961. And then that case also said that the municipality could not be sued, only the officer. Fast forward to 1978, Monell v. Department of Social Services of the City of New York. This case allowed for the municipalities to be sued in addition to the officer. So as of 1978, now officers and municipalities can be sued if in violation of citizens' rights were violated, civil rights were violated. The qualified immunity has moved through the years, has evolved through the years to move from good intentions to something that's much more solid to which we have today, which is Saucier v. Katz. That case law sharpened the focus of all of the other case laws regarding qualified immunity. And basically, there's two questions that the judges, the courts ask. They ask one question. First question they ask: was the citizen's constitutional rights violated? Were their rights violated? If their rights weren't violated, then there's no reason to go forward. If their rights were violated, then we move to the second question, which is, were those rights clearly established at the time of the incident? And that means that if I take somebody and someone's walking down the street and I take them and I throw them on the ground and I handcuff them. They ask me, why are you doing this? Well, because you look like a guy who robbed the lady yesterday. Okay, I don't have reasonable suspicion, I just have a hunch. I have a hunch that this was the guy. That does not rise to the level of reasonable suspicion. So therefore, there's a case law that, we've already pointed out, there's case law that clearly indicates you must have reasonable suspicion, you must have articulable facts to support your stop. I don't have articulable facts to support that stop. So now as a result, at the time of this incident, there's a clearly established set of rules in place for investigatory stop. Consequently, I wouldn't be eligible for qualified immunity. It would be denied, and I'd have to go to court, and I'd have to fight it in court. When officers are given qualified immunity, they've answered no to one of those questions. And as a result of answering no to one of those questions, they are granted qualified immunity, meaning that they can't be sued, that they can't be civilly sued. Yes.
Who makes the decision
On
to qualify immunity? Is it another police officer?
no ma'am.
Is it
No, it goes before a judge. It goes before a judge. And just like I'm laying out the case law to you now, that's what they would go back to. So if, in this instance, if I said, well, I didn't know, there was no law that said I couldn't take this person on a hunch, I couldn't take this person and go down and say, well, of course there is. There's this case law, there's this case law, and there's this case law. Law clearly says that you can't do that unless you have reasonable suspicion. You never had reasonable suspicion, but I had a hunch. But you didn't have reasonable suspicion, but I had a hunch. There's no case law that says that you can do. There's case law that says you can't do that. You're guilty. You violated this person's rights when the law was clearly established that you shouldn't do that. So the judge would make that determination, and once the judge makes that determination, they'll say qualified immunity or no qualified immunity again. Now it goes before a civil judge. And actually, in that instance right there, it may even go criminal because that's battery. Right.
But it's still up to
Sure.
the officer's interpretation.
It's an officer's interpretation on the action.
Law.
On the action, it's the judge's interpretation of the case law. So now what you have happened, and there's been numerous officers who had qualified immunity, they have not received qualified immunity because there's case law that's in place. There's been others who have received qualified immunity because there were case law in place that one case law in place at the time when they committed whatever action. It wasn't clearly placed. So, for example, in Tennessee v. Garner, there was no case law in place for shooting an unarmed fleeing subject. There was no case law in place. Matter of fact, state law says that it was legal to do it. Today, if somebody shoots somebody who's unarmed, who's fleeing, and it's just a property crime, they have a problem. And you see, and obviously, if you don't read the case laws during the different case laws that come out during the course of the year, you wouldn't see it. But there's lots of officers who are they're seeking qualified immunity and it's being denied. In the case with Monell v. Pate, that was one where case law was denied because what they did was, in essence, they went into the man's house without a warrant. They took him from his home, took him to the jail, handcuffed him, questioned them, did all of these things, and there's clear case law on the procedure for entering someone's home. There's clear case law for taking someone into custody. They had nothing other than a hunch. They were working clearly off of a hunch, and that's why we had Monell v. Pate. It was because a judge looked at it and said, this violates all laws. This violates all laws, and they knew they were wrong. It ended up going to a district court. The district court ruled in favor of the police. So the family, and it was a family of 6 or 7 of them. It was husband, wife, and the 3 or 4 kids. So they moved from the district courts to the state courts, and the state court overturned. So that's kind of how it works. Like I said, we were trying to get too deep in, but please, if you have questions, so you can have a better understanding of some of these terms that you hear, some of these concepts here, we can kind of walk through. Okay, let's take a few minutes and then we'll get back to it.
We have water in the back, if you guys want water, if you guys need a restroom, just let us know. Do a passage for the female and then I go back. You need that? Yeah. There's water cold and then there's room temperature.
Now, I'm sorry about that. I want to talk a little bit about the human aspect of it. This is the legal side of it, but I want to talk a little bit about the human aspects of it. And we call this human performance factors. These are things that no matter how much training, we do train a lot, but there are certain things that you can't train out in regards to human performance. There's a level that we reach in human performance that we can't break certain things. Like you might be great in the mile, but there is a limit where you just can't run it any fast. So we do have some things that we want to point a couple of things out with that and see what we go. Okay. So there's 2 things that we talked to our officers about. We talked to them about OODA, we talked to them about critical decision-making model. OODA is a 4-step decision-making process where we observe, orient, decide, and act. And with this, OODA it was developed by Air Force strategist, Colonel John Boyd. And this was for combat. And we oftentimes see this in critical incidents where people run through the OODA, they observe, they orient, decide, they act, and they run through that circle. What we found with OODA is that you don't break the circle. You have to complete the cycle before you can start over. The critical decision-making model is a little different in that it's similar to the OODA loop in that it's a loop, but it's a circular decision-making model. However, the critical decision-making model is not for combat purpose. It's more for a slow down situation. This was developed in Scotland and in like late 90s, early 2000s. And this was more for instances of people with non-weapon or non-gun related issues. And in this model, we can start over again because it's based on information, how much information we get, and we start over. So there's the information gathering, we assess whatever threats and risks that we have with this information that we receive. We think about our policing powers. What can we do as a police officer? What are my powers in that situation? We think about what's the best way to resolve this problem, and then we decide, we act and we review, That's the critical decision-making model. At any point in time, I can get new information and it starts my process over again. Right? So these are things that are going on without even thinking about it. We're kind of working our way through these things as we go to a cause. Sure.
How does that come into play with intrinsic bias?
Within
Intrinsic bias.
Okay, so this is not going to deal with biases so much. For example, so let me give you an example. We get a call that we have a man standing out on Northeast 124th Street, 125 Street, Northeast 4th Avenue, standing outside with a sword in his hand. People are running from him. That's the call. That's all the information we have. At this point, there's nothing about black, white, green, purple, orange, yellow. My intrinsic bias is he's got a sword, people are running, he's probably threatening somebody. That's it, right? So now as I'm going, I have this information in the critical decision-making model. I'm now assessing what risks I have. Okay, he has a sword, he has people there, so he's a danger to me because he has a sword. He's a danger to the people that are around him. We have traffic that's there. Is this a deadly force encounter? Yes, it's a possible deadly force encounter because he has a deadly weapon. can we utilize, so this is the process that I'm going through as I'm thinking about this in my route. Now, remember, there's 2 or 3 minutes between the call and getting there. I probably have a couple minutes. Now, I have to also think about my policing powers. My policing powers are deadly force. Can I use less people? I can. However, we're going to have to really time this, and we're going to have some things in place. This is definitely a deadly force encounter. When I get to what's the best way to resolve this, okay, we need to get him away from people, and then we can kind of operate and work from there. Oh, by the way, we just got more information. The man is completely naked now. He's sweating. He's running, and people hear him saying things that it's unintelligible. You can't understand what he's saying, but he's saying a bunch of things. Nobody's hurt. He hasn't attacked anybody. Does that change does that make me start over now a little bit? Yes, because I got to reassess now. Okay, he's naked now. So that means that he's possibly on drugs, he's possibly on alcohol, he's possibly got mental health issues, or possible combination of all those things. He's going to be difficult to wrestle with because he's naked and he's wet. He still has a sword, so he's still kind of like a deadly force encounter, but it doesn't seem like he's trying to hurt anybody. But we still have to take that into account. Oh, by the way, this is rush hour traffic, so we have a bunch of cars on the road, and it's on a Saturday. So now we're processing all this. What's the best way to deal with this? Oh, the best way to deal with this, we have multiple units coming. Let's try to get this person so he's no longer moving. We get him stationary or get his mobility stopped, and now we deal with him on that front. Units get there, we get him cornered off, and then we address the issue. Somebody gains a rapport with him, they start talking to him. It's still unintelligible, but he's starting to calm down. He's burning down for whatever reason. He puts the sword down, we're able to go in and take him into custody. At this point, these human performance factors have nothing to do with intrinsic bias. Biases have nothing to do with biases that's more of a reasoning. Like I'm thinking about it, although we do have some that are more implicit where we don't think about it as things that we already have. But these don't really address that. Okay, this is more of like literal performance. Yeah, this is literal performance.
But do you have a component?
We do have components. We do train for implicit bias training throughout the course of the year. So we do that. Again, a lot of the things with this is there's no bias when somebody's got a sword. There's no bias when somebody has a gun and they're pointing at people. So now we're talking more about things like traffic stops and things of that nature. And now when we talk about that, there's other things that go along with that. And actually, I'm going to touch on the bias in a second here when I talk about intelligence-based police. The things that need to consider, and I'm not going to dive deep into it, but reaction time. Reaction time is very important. Reaction time is the moment that I see a problem or I'm aware of a problem and I make a chance to react. So I have a training gun here. Reaction time is the door opens and I see a long barrel gun. From the point I see the long barrel gun to the point I draw my weapon, that's called reaction time. Now we're going to see here that reaction time can be slowed down for a number of reasons. One, open environment. When we're in a training situation like this, reaction time is not as impacted because we know it's training. But when it's an open environment and there's other things that are impacting us, like people walking in the background, cars passing, possible crossfire, and I have to make adjustments, it impacts my reaction time. Complexity of the event, things I just named, that makes the situation much more complex. Focus of attention. While I'm focused, I see the barrel of the gun. I also see in the background, I see somebody walking in the background. So I know I can't draw my firearm and point because I have somebody in the background who's responsible for every one of these rounds. So now, yes, I can draw my firearm, but now I need to change my angle so that now I get that person out of my background. Well, that just affects my reaction time. And all of this is going on in tenths of seconds. So we're going to understand, and I'm really going somewhere with this because it's important that you kind of understand it. When our bodies, and again, what I told you, I don't care how fast we train, there's a limit to how fast we process. Our brains can only process so fast. Human touch. Body, it takes a brain between 0.14 seconds to process touch. I mean, touch, okay, is that a good touch or is that a bad touch? Is that a touch I need to push away from, or is that a touch I'm okay and I can stay there? Sight, 0.16 seconds, that's how long it takes me to process sight. 0.18 to 0.22 seconds, that's how long it takes to process sound. Movement time, it's the interval between the start of my movement and the end of that movement. So going back to my reaction time, I see the barrel, I see everything going on behind me, I move from the point that I drew my weapon to the point I come up and I fire, that's my movement time. Okay. Now, what they found in scientific studies is that it takes, if there's nothing else going on, this guy comes in with a barrel, I'm not worried about anybody else walking behind me, and I draw my weapon, it takes 0.31 seconds for me to pull, to draw my firearm and squeeze the trigger. If there's other things going on, it can take up to 0.56 seconds to pull the trigger. Why is all of that important? Because sometimes we have people who say, well, why did he get shot in the back? Why did they shoot him in the back? Well, because let's think about what we just talked about with reaction time and movement time. It takes me 0.31 seconds to fire. It takes me 0.56 seconds to deliver my rounds. If I take the shot here, shot, this person turns to try to run, shot, it looks like I shot him in the back. But did I shoot him in the back because I wanted to shoot him in the back, or did I shoot him in the back because I had one more shot no matter what? I couldn't stop that shot. We're going to talk about stopping the shoot. It's like a car. A car goes, a really fast car, 0 to 60 in 3 or 4 seconds, right? Really, really fast car. No car that probably hit a bus driver, but there's cars like at Miami Gardens this weekend where they're 0 to 60 in 2-3 seconds, right? You think that car stops in 2 or 3 seconds? No, it takes a lot longer to stop than it starts. And this is one of the things that happens in these shooting situations. We can actually get about 3 shots off before, or we can get off 2 shots. We can get off 2 shots in the time it takes that they found to stop shooting. 0.31 seconds, I fired 1 shot and I'm into the second shot, and I can't stop it. Remember I told you about the OODA loop. Once we start through that cycle, we have to finish the cycle. I have to finish this cycle, whether I want to, even if I want to stop it, I can't stop it because the mind has already said go, and it's just that round is going on, right? So I've gotten 2 shots off in that 35.35 seconds. Go ahead, question. Okay. So these are things that we have to take into account, human performance factors. And sometimes, and I get what you're saying about biases, and yeah, certainly, I'm not going to tell you here that hopefully we've been very honest about some of the things that are going on in law enforcement. Yes, there are people here, there are people who have biases. Yes, there's police officers with bias. But there's some things that go beyond bias, go beyond, because I can't think about it. Yeah, I can't think about this. This is something, if I want to stop this shot, I can't stop it if I've decided that I'm going to shoot. I'm going to get 1 round. So that part becomes important. Reaction time is very important. And now, issue with reaction time is that action versus reaction. That person who just presented his gun, he's already ahead of me. He's already ahead of me because he's made the decision to shoot. He has made the decision, or she's made the decision to shoot. I'm behind him now. I'm trying to catch up. I'm trying to catch up to where they're at, but the shot is already going off. So action is always going to be faster than a reaction. Research says that a suspect can draw a gun from their waistband in 0.25 seconds. I can't get a shot off before 0.31 seconds. Everybody understand where we're going with that? I'm behind. I'm 0.06 seconds behind that person as they pull from their waistband. There is no way that only way that I can survive this is if he misses and I see it and I start moving and I can start delivering rounds, right? Research says that it would take an officer on average about 0.62 seconds to get a shot. That means that in 0.25 seconds they can pull, in 0.31 seconds they can shoot. So they're gonna get that's 0.56. They're probably gonna get about 2 shots off before I get my first shot, according to the study. So it's very important that we, as we start to talk about some of these shootings that we have, people being shot in the back. Why was he shot on his way down? Well, he was shot on his way down because that guy couldn't stop the second shot. He had to finish through with the second shot, or that lady had to finish through with the second shot. There's human performance factors in it. We would like for people to be able to stop immediately, but it just doesn't happen.
That's because of your training?
It's not because of training, it's because the way the mind works, but the way the brain works, it's reacting. It's reacting to this danger. The shot, the brain is saying you need to fire another shot, but the person's already going down, or the person's turned around. Well, it's too late. I can't pull that round back. I can't pull that message back. We got to go through with it, and then we assess when we come out of it. Talk about that. Another thing that we have to talk about is fight or flight, and it's the human body's reaction to stress. Most people's reaction to stress comes when they're in a car and somebody pulls out in front, right? You jump. Okay. Now imagine somebody with a gun and you're facing somebody with a gun, and now you're dealing with them, right? This is called amygdala hijack. And just really quick. So we have the prefrontal cortex, which is where all of our reasoning takes place. Reasoning, thinking, judgment, ability to decipher through consequences, all that happens in the prefrontal cortex. As long as there's no stress, we're operating in that region, and we can function and we can make the decisions. As soon as we move into the amygdala, which is the emotional center of the brain, is where our fight or flight center is at. As soon as we start operating from there, if the stress is strong enough, the amygdala will overtake the prefrontal cortex, and now we're no longer reasoning, we're overreacting. Now, one of the things that they found with the amygdala hijack is that the reactions are immediate and they're usually out of proportion. The other thing that they found is that the officer is consumed with, or the person is consumed with guilt because it's more than what they want, more than what they needed to do. Oftentimes, when you see shooting videos, you only see the officer shoot someone. They never show you the rest of the video. And when you see the rest of the video, you won't hear officers crying. You hear officers crying because they had to react. It was a super stressful moment. They had to react to it. It's more than what they wanted to, not more than what was necessary. It was more than what they wanted to. Most human beings are not built to kill people. They're just not built to kill people. And I can give you 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 different videos where officers have had to use deadly force. They were justified in using deadly force, and they cried like babies. Why? Because it's a super emotional dump. And this is what happens with the amygdala hijack. The amygdala hijack, it impacts our memory, it impacts decision making, and it impacts our ability to weigh consequences. Other human performance factors we have to consider is distortion of space and time. And I'll just talk about two that we've heard before. One is auditory exclusion, where the brain, once you get into a stressful situation, the brain is very efficient in homing resources. Right now, there's a flash of light over there, and I see a figure. I don't need my ears for that. I need my eyes so I can see what's coming through that corner, so I can work with my weapon. My hearing may go faint, it may disappear completely. I may not hear anything, but my eyes become super sharp, and now I get tunnel in, not on everything else that's around me, which is the tunnel vision. My periphery goes from here to here. So I'm locked in on that door because I know that that's where the danger is coming from. Those are things that sometimes and we'll talk about body-worn cameras in a second, with body worn cameras, they don't tell the whole story. Because if I'm in a stressful situation, the body worn camera shows this whole room. I promise you, in a stressful situation, I'm only gonna see this. I'm only gonna see where the danger is at, and I'm gonna become super hyper focused on that situation and not on everything else that's around me. Well, did you see that other officer? Did you see that kid? No, I did. And they're telling the truth. But these human performance factors have to be taken into account. I'm not saying that it's a justification for anything that any officer does, but they have to be taken into account because there's certain things we cannot train. We can train the body to handle stress a little better. We can handle the body, we can train the body to not break down as quickly. It's just like running. If I want you to run a 2 mile, run a mile, I might tell you, well, let's go run a mile and a half. I'm going to press you past the mile so that when you run the mile that you can handle it. Well, we try to press with our training to be able to withstand stress, but there's only so much stress we can simulate, which is what you're going to see when we do the modeling. There's only so much stress that can be simulated. I can't simulate somebody with a real gun who wants to hurt me. I can't simulate that. There's only so much simulation I can do. But now, when I know that that's real and bullets are flying, there's going to come a point where stress takes over, and now we're operating simply from survival mode, right? Survival mode is different for everybody. Some people can stand and see that and they're good and they operate from it, and other people break down very quickly. So it's from person to person. It's not uniform. We don't uniformly handle stress, right? That's even in our own lives, in our personal lives, in our work lives. One person may work well under stress. Give them 5 things to do at one time, and they're handling those things and they're dealing with it. You have somebody else 5 things to do when they crumble. They go in the bathroom and cry. I'm done for the day, right? Everybody, each person is a little bit different, and we have to be careful how we look at those things. So the courts, this is what the courts have said. The courts have said, you know what? We have never called police officers to be perfect. The community, the general public has said, police, I want you to be perfect. The court said, we have never asked police to be perfect. We only asked that you be reasonable. Now, reasonably perceived threats are articulable facts that would lead a reasonable person to believe a person has a weapon. Now, sometimes you've read cases where the person was reaching for a waistband and he was shot. It goes to trial, nothing happens. They don't find the police officer guilty. Well, one of the things that happens, furtive gestures, grab the waistband, reaching for something out of sight, holding an object that also believes to be a deadly weapon is a perceived threat. Why? Because where do most people carry their weapons? They carry their weapons in their waistband. Most people carry a waistband or carry a gun here. If it's in a car, it's under the seat. So I see somebody reaching into their car, reaching under their seat. A reasonable officer says, what? Hey, there could possibly be a gun under there. He could possibly, or she could possibly be reaching for a gun under there. So the courts have said, you don't have to be perfect, just be reasonable. It is unreasonable for me. It would be unreasonable for me to say, I perceived a threat from this young lady who was standing at this door and the gun was there and I was between her and the gun. The gun is over at the coffee machine. I'm standing here and I know the gun is there. She tells me the gun is there and I take my gun and I shoot her. That's unreasonable. That would be completely unreasonable. Why? Because there is no perceived threat because I'm between her and the threat. That's not reasonable. And that's what the courts are saying. The courts are saying that, hey, you have to be reasonable in this. Now, remember what I told you about waistband. How fast does it take a person to draw a gun from a waistband?
6'5".
0.25 seconds. Yeah, 0.25 seconds. So if it takes them 0.25 seconds and it takes me 0.31 seconds or 0.56 seconds to react, the courts have said, you know what? It's not reasonable for me to wait for you to wait to see the gun because it's too late now. Now I'm banking on this person being a bad shooter. I'm not willing to do that. I'm willing to, if you're going for your waistband and I've told you not to do it and you still do it, I'm willing to shoot you and then we'll see what happens with the courts say. We'll see what the courts say. Why? Because it's unreasonable. And let's take a look at what case law says. And again, we teach based on case law because case law is directive for law enforcement. Ryder versus City of Topeka said the courts concluded because of requirement that a suspect actually have a weapon will place police in a dangerous and unreasonable situation where a particular seizure is reasonable is dependent on the totality of circumstances and not simply on whether the suspect was actually armed. And again, this points back to reasonably perceived threats. Thomas V. Hubbard. The court said an officer is not constitutionally required to wait until he sets eye upon the weapon before employing deadly force to protect himself against a fleeing felon who turns and moves as though to draw a gun. There's a number out there like 0.4 something, 0.3 something, where how long it takes a person who's running away to pull a gun out and reach over their shoulder and shoot. So there's been a lot of studies done with it. So the courts, without really looking at the human performance side of it, they married their case law with that human performance aspect. In Anderson v. Russell, they said the courts ruled that the officer was reasonable in his use of deadly force because there was a well-founded fear, though mistaken, that the subject was reaching for a gun. The court said further, and that part's not pointing. 1983 doesn't redress injuries resulting from a reasonable mistake. From reasonable mistakes, again, reasonable mistakes. And that's what we have to kind of keep in mind. Not perfect, reasonable. Reasonable mistakes.
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
I'm sure most of that is like.
No, it's not.
In my hands, in my life. If somebody is like running away and, they're not supposed to be running away because you're telling them, stop.
Yeah.
And they keep choosing to go against the police, like exactly doing the opposite. They say, they're still running away. And the only way to stop them is shooting from behind. Can you aim to say, I'm gonna shoot his leg so the guy is not gonna be able to go anywhere? It's not really something you can control.
Okay.
Because the leg, okay, doesn't go to surgery and, no big deal,
Okay.
It's not doable, right?
Well, first of all, we have to, again, why is this person running away? First of all, what?
You did something bad, probably.
No. What I'm saying is, okay, he's running away. Do I have a right? And this goes back to the critical decision making model. Are my policing powers allowing me to shoot this person? Number one. Number one is, am I allowed to shoot him? Are they doing something so serious that it's a threat to me or to the community?
Well, but you did something bad already, maybe.
Well, you know what? You're on the store, right? You're on 7-Eleven. If he goes in and steals 2 cases of beer, has he done something bad to you? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. But is that bad enough for a police officer to shoot him in the back? No.
No, not to guilty, but maybe you need, or maybe it's something even worse than that, maybe more, but like, you need the guy. If the guy's gonna end up going away if you're not sure. He's running away, before you, so you won't be able to catch him if you're sure. Can you aim to say, I'm letting the guy stop and not kill him?
Tennessee v. Garner says that I can't use deadly force. I cannot use deadly force on every fleeing felon. There has to be a severity to the crime, right? So that's number one. Number two, the courts have said that if I draw my weapon, this is a deadly force weapon. This is not a weapon to incapacitate. That's what the taser is. So any shot that I take is going to be deadly force. Whether I shoot him in the head or shoot him in the leg is deadly force. That's number one. That's number two. Number three, what the courts have said, because this question comes up a lot. Well, why did they have to shoot him so many times? Well, number one, the courts have said that the first shot and the 15th shot were lethal. Because if the first shot warranted a deadly shot, a deadly force reaction, then the 15th shot was just as required. It's just as much required. Now, obviously, we want to be reasonable even in the amount of rounds that we put down range. But again, like I told you, there's a human performance thing. And there's plenty of instances where people have been shot multiple times, 4, 5, 6 times, and he survived. A few years back, we had a subject who was sitting in a victim who was sitting in the car, and some guys came up and shot him with AR. Close range, probably 15, 16 times. I don't know what this man was doing when he was in his car. I don't know if he was literally moving his organs around, but he lived. 15 shots and he lived. So do people survive with multiple rounds being put in them? Yes, they do. It's all about shot placement. It's all about shot. If I put one in your head, then that shuts the computer down. Computer's gone. If I shoot you in the legs and the arms, you still have a chance to function. Now, we have a firearms instructor here in regards to that question that you asked about shooting him in the legs. I'm gonna let him answer that question because he was over there hyperventilating when you asked.
So I'm gonna ask something, I've seen you writing the whole time. No, it's okay. Could you write as nice and walk at the same time?
No.
No, right? Same thing, firearms have certain steps we have to take to fire. So if I start moving with another person moving, I have to have different things. Now, there's fundamentals to that. There's sight picture, sight alignment, trigger sweep, breathing, all of that comes into play. Now, everybody, I love that question because everybody says, shoot him in the leg, shoot him in the arm. Some of the major veins are in your legs. So if you hit a femoral artery, that person has less than a minute to live. If you hit a brachial artery, we're in the same aspect. So when we start looking at that, and it's not a precise shot, it's different. There's more chances of a person living if they are hit in the lower extremity, the stomach, than anything else. In combat, I'm going to take a little bit further back. Soldiers would die, and I'm going back into World War I and II. Soldiers were more prone to die from limb injuries, from limbs being shot, than anything else. Because of they weren't aware of that. They weren't aware of these major arteries and how to stop them. So yeah, it is a little bit difficult. Now, another thing is to be precise. To be precise. I'm an avid shooter. I shoot at least maybe twice a week for fun on my own time with my kids.
In the paper study, that's different.
That is different. That's why I say, like my child shoots in front of the paper. Now, when I take her to the field to run, she's not as accurate. Because now I'm giving her two factors. I'm moving her. So remember what I said, side alignment. We got control, but what else do we have to control is breathing. As I start, that gun starts moving up and down. So the chances of me missing and surpassing going beyond my target are extremely high. So like the major was saying, can we shoot somebody for a felony? Yeah, I had one actually today. I had an individual try to run out on me at Home Depot with felony amount of stuff. Should I have run after him and started shooting him? No, why? It's property. But like you said, can I do that the same thing to a person that just committed a mass shooting? Different story, but I can't go beyond my training level. So given that, that does make a difference. There's an officer's training level. Do we train them to shoot and move? Absolutely. I'm the head firearms instructor, and that's one thing I coach is shooting and move. There's nothing stands still. No person stands still. Nobody's gonna go, all right. In the old movies where they'll stand in front of the bad guy and there's it's not. You get a lot of this. So we do teach them how to move and shoot. But like everything, once you put somebody to run, you start making them realize that breathing is a big factor of shooting. Controlling your fire and lighting. So we do all of those. But we teach to shoot at the bigger picture, which is the chest area, because of the size of the target. And as Major Carter's been saying, once they do pull their firearm out, they have to meet those certain criteria that they're going to utilize deadly force. So where would you like somebody to utilize deadly force? In a bigger target picture or in a smaller one with the possibility of the round continuing? So I know that's the question that a lot of people have, should the arm, should the leg? It's difficult, especially when it's moving. If you go home or pass by a park, look at somebody running. It's really fast and it's fast paced and those legs are moving and the arms are flinging and it's really quick. And one thing you guys gotta understand, like he's been talking about human performance. It could go from something as long as me speaking to somebody to now I'm in a foot chase. Somebody put, I saw a movie that it got very interesting. They say, hey, have you ever seen a lion stretch out before it runs after prey? But if we take off fast, I might not be able to move for the next 6 days because I pulled something. So that's what we go under. We go from 0 to extremely stressful in a very rapid timeline. So everything he put on there, right? Add a stress level to it. And add now you got to look at everything, as he's been saying, individually, officer per officer. Are they in shape? Do they run over? Do they maintain some kind of physical? I saw you just grab all of a sudden, which is, but that's true.
As you're moving, it's only changing as well.
Right. Everything moves, everything shifts. Does he pose a threat now to the rest of the public once he reaches a certain area? So we have to look at all of that and about as fast as I just snap my fingers. And as well as keeping the factor of, do I shoot? When was the last time I shot? Do I only shoot when the department forces me to go shoot? All of those are factors to take into place. Because those are factors when it all boils down to. But yeah, I'm sorry.
No worries, because I heard you in the back, so I knew you wanted to jump on that. But that's, believe it or not, and I know you said that was like a crazy question, it's not a crazy question. That question is asked every time we have a discussion, that question comes up, and then they do the Milo, and they realize, okay, it's not that. So you're gonna get a chance to prove it.
Yeah.
You're gonna get a chance to see that today. But that does pose a problem. If there's human performance factors, and I don't care how much you shoot, there's factors that come into it as far as conditioning, everything plays a part in it. So that's why the courts have said, listen, we can't demand perfection because you're human beings. We just can't, we do demand it for a reason. Because if not, then we're gonna have issues with biases and things of that nature. So body-worn cameras, listen, there's a ton of positive aspects to body-worn cameras: accountability, transparency. It protects good officers from false allegations and accusations, and it protects the citizens from bad behaving criminal officers. It helps officers make better decisions in regards to use of force, and it provides an excellent training tool. However, there are some negatives with body-worn cameras, especially if you're utilizing it only as your only means of capturing, analyzing the situation. First of all, the camera cannot capture what officer's attention and eyes are. If my camera is set here, there's no way that it's going to see what I see in that corner. There's no way that camera, remember we talked about tunnel vision, I may be right here. I may not have any, I may have access to everything that the camera has access to. So when you look at it, you say, well, how did he not see that? It's very easy how he didn't see that. He was under stress. He was experiencing tunnel vision. Important danger cues may not be captured. There's intrinsic things that happen that the camera just can't capture. Camera speed is different from the reaction time of off that you just talked about. So the camera speed is much faster. Cameras fall off through a foot chase, so now you don't have anything. So the most important thing with the cameras, the most important negative with the camera is in regard to Granby conduct, because it does encourage some second guessing, and officers are told in Granby Connor, officers are not supposed to be judged based on 20/20 hindsight. In other words, you don't get to sit at home, look at this video and say, oh man, why didn't you miss? Why didn't you do that? No, it's what a reasonable officer would want to see at that time in that setting. And so those are things that have to kind of take into account.
That's a good point, because if you watch football, you always like, why didn't you? But you weren't on the field and you didn't throw the pass the way that you wanted to throw the pass.
Yeah.
That makes really, really pissed.
And this is why it becomes very important. This is why we spend a lot of time talking to our officers about reports. Don't be dependent on somebody picking up your camera and looking at what you did. No, you have to put into your report. What was it you felt? What did you see? What were you expecting? Because those things are important. Those things are things that the camera will never catch. And those are vital pieces of the puzzle as to why this action took place. Sure.
Come up as well, it captures the images that are moving forward. But it's not 360 degrees like on the sides. It doesn't capture anything except the one up the head.
Yeah, it's all based on where it's at. So you're absolutely right. Yeah.
So there are a lot of missing parts.
There are a lot of missing parts. Now, one of the things that we do is everybody on scene has a camera. Now, hopefully there's multiple cameras and then you get multiple angles. Sometimes you only get one camera because the camera fell off, so you only have one angle. So, you know, it happens like this.
Are they required to be on all the time?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And how can you tell if it's on or off?
Because when we,
No, I'm saying as a citizen, how can you tell?
you should see a red light, but I mean,
That's what I want to do.
yeah.
Yes, it's a red indicator. It's actually a red indicator light as soon as they turn it on. It's looks like Iron Man for lack of words. You'll see three. It's a triad LED where it's three red indicators and it's just flashing just like any other camera.
Okay.
And as far as the field of view, man, it has 146-degree field of view. So you're kind of looking at about this range.
Yeah.
And it also chimes every 2 minutes.
Out
Depending
loud?
on the volume that the officer has it,
Mhm.
it's more so for the officer to know that it's continuously recorded because he can't look down at the red circle. It doesn't let him know it in a display screen that it is on record mode, but it's just that audio.
Is that all departments or just ours?
So every department has their own settings that they put the cameras at. For the most part, what I've seen across the board is something to the fact of the red LED. But every department has their own way of doing it. Some departments allow the officers to put the LED on, take it off. Us, on the other hand, we have it on for every officer, no matter.
And say you get pulled over in Miami.
Mhm.
Can I request that the officer put it on if I'm not sure?
That goes more so to their policy.
No,
So
I'm just saying, would I be out of pocket if I say, would you mind putting on your body?
He's probably wearing it and he's probably gonna tell you because it's,
I just want him to say yes or no.
and most of them are gonna tell you that. Most of them can tell you, yeah, it's on. Yeah.
yeah, you
Okay,
can
that's what I'm saying, I can ask.
yeah, you could ask, are you recording at this point?
Yeah.
And they could say, yes, ma'am, I am, or no, ma'am, I'm not. I mean, it goes dictate on.
Can I ask a question? Are they on all the time? They're on the officers, anytime they encounter a citizen or anytime they're dispatched to a call, they have to activate. And if they don't, that is when they have to fill out a form, and if they don't do that, then that is when this. Because they have to be to report, we need to see what's going on, so as soon as they're dispatched to a call, they say that they're around, cameras have to be turned on. And if they're not dispatched, I just walk into the Walgreens or somebody out there, hey, officer, put on your camera. And the first 30 seconds, it's only video, no audio, and then after that, the audio kicks in. That's just the way the cameras are set up. And you'll see it's red. If not, they're all black. So you'll see a thing, if not, you see a big red light, even during the daytime, you see the red light on.
Now, the only component that you have for that is if the officer encounters some form of force or some kind of encounter that he has to act immediately,
Right.
be it to protect somebody or to protect himself. So at that point, he has to turn on his camera as soon as practical. But let's just say that this officer had to pull his taser out very rapidly for whatever reason may be. The taser actually has a feature that when he flicks it on, it also immediately turns on his camera if it's not on. So if he has to do some kind of reaction time quickly, that will set off the camera to turn on. All right, so there are features in the camera that with certain signals that it will turn it on without him having to press it or what have you.
Okay, and then like Major Fernandez said, we have internal processes that where commanders have to review footage during the course of monthly. So they'll also catch where people haven't turned on their cameras, and then we address it that way. And that's internally how we do it. And a lot of agencies have some internal function where to ensure that people are turning on their cameras. In addition to the random times that we pull footage or whatever, somebody makes a complaint and we realize everybody didn't have the cameras on. Address it. I'm just gonna mention, we teach de-escalation, so I want to go to this bill here. In 2016, there were between 9,700 and 14,700 incidents of deadly weapons assault against law enforcement officers. In that same year, there were only 990 deaths from police use of force. So what these numbers translate into is one citizen for every 10 deadly weapon attacks. If there was 9,700, then one citizen death for every 15 deadly weapon attacks. If there was 14,700. That number is, those two numbers come from two different sources. One is from the Guardian and one is from the Washington Post. The Guardian is a little bit more liberal. The Washington Post is a little bit more conservative with their numbers. So that's why you get the fluctuation numbers, but that's the range. And basically what this is showing that, because some people say, well, police officers, all they do is go out and shoot people. Well, in 2016, they had 14,000, between 9,700 and 14,000 opportunities to kill people based on being attacked with a deadly weapon, and only 990 people were killed. Which means that, or which indicates or suggests that there's a lot of discipline and a lot of restraint that's being used by law enforcement officers. And I'll assure you that number is probably now, sometimes with these numbers, we don't get them every year because the studies, they're random in how they go about doing it. I try to check every year to see if somebody's done a study. This is the last one that was done. But what it does suggest to us is that there is some restraint that's being used by law enforcement officers.
However, but if you
Sure.
look at it from the
Sure.
perspective of the family, if the person was that,
Sure.
and they're one of that 990,
Mhm.
all y'all are that. And all
Absolutely.
y'all are out here.
But remember what I just said. They were using deadly force. They attacked the officer with a deadly weapon.
But the
And that's-
person who's the child, the mama,
I get you.
standing over the child is not thinking.
I understand that part.
But I'm saying, it's a double-edged sword in the sense that the numbers don't lie. However, to each individual, it does make a difference.
We're talking about criminals, we are not talking about good people walking in the street.
Not necessarily, not everybody who gets shot is necessarily a criminal, but,
If you're shooting the police, you're a criminal.
okay, we're gonna leave that alone.
And you know what? Let me just say this. Let me say this. I understand what you.
Yeah.
Okay, listen, hey, the whole idea here is to have open conversation with such.
No, but you
everybody.
never need a citizen like me in the board, to be honest with you, because. Like,
Whoa,
we are talking about like,
whoa,
we
whoa,
are
wait.
talking about like people shooting the police and we are discussing if they're bad people or good people. What good people shoot the police?
Okay, and you're
Or
absolutely
who's
right.
anybody else, doesn't matter who.
Listen, and that's understood, but let's be civil. Let's be civil. Listen, everybody's entitled to their opinion and their position, and that's good because we have different viewpoints, and that's okay. It's okay. All right. Trust me. You cannot tell me that this is going to be the hardest group of people that I've had to sit in and have to do this discussion with. I've had people who are fresh out of jail who come in and they've been model citizens. So listen, we all have a different perspective, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. We're all going to look at it, the same information, and we're going to interpret it different. I'm not offended by it at all. Trust me, there's people who sat in here with their arms folded and they said some things that are like, okay, yeah, you're kind of right. You're right about that. There's things, and the reason why we present what we present early on is to help everybody understand. We know where we come, we know where law enforcement came from, we know where the roots are at, we know where some of the issues are at, we know where some of the feelings stem from, right? But we also want to present it where it's balanced, where we also get an understanding that, hey, yeah, that is what it was back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever. Take a look at it right now. It's markedly different now than what it was then, and there's some numbers that would suggest that. Again, with this right here, this is more to show the restraint that's being used, and you're absolutely right. If it's my child, if it's my family member, yes, I am gonna hurt, and I do have a slide for that, because it's something that we teach our people, teach our officers, and it's something that we really hang on to with defense attack. So actually, you kind of jumped ahead, but we're gonna get there, all right? We're gonna get there, okay? Smile for it. All right, so there was a question about bias. And what we use is intelligence-based policing. Every week we meet and we talk about our numbers, talk about where crimes are taking place, and we develop strategies for addressing it. That's called intelligence-based policing. The theory behind intelligence-based policing is to remove the bias so that now only the numbers talk to us. The numbers dictate where we're going. If there's a bunch of shootings over here, well, guess where our resources are going to be taken? Over to that corner. And they're going to move from over here. If there's a bunch of robberies over here, then we're going to take our resources and put them there. And based on that, this is how we kind of move away from the biases, and we look more at the numbers of what's going on. Now, also too, we do we have micro analysis within that, which also helps us to kind of pinpoint who the subjects might be, helps us to pinpoint the time in the day. So we have a lot of layers to those stats and to those numbers that help us to figure out where we need to go. Our intelligence-based policing, and it's not just us, it's across the country. Across the country, major agencies are moving towards intelligence-based policing. And this actually started back in New York with StatCom, where they started doing that, and then it's kind of trickled down to everybody else. So as I told you, there's a little something for everybody's question that, like, as we move through, we have to get to it, but professionalism and transparency. So for example, this is something that, and again, this is something that for the groups that we're talking to, these are some of the things that come up, right? So in 2018, African Americans committed, according to the FBI, they committed 54.9% of homicides in this country and 60% of the robberies. Most of those crimes were committed by males who comprise 6% of the African American population. Again, the question was asked, the question's often asked, why is the Black community over police? And so these numbers would suggest that, yes, there's pockets of communities that we have that policing has to go into because there's issues there, there's problems there. So this was one of the things that we talked about with this, and this is one of the reasons, this is how intelligence-based policing works. That's what it's supposed to be geared to. Quick question. How many police contacts do you think took place in 2019?
Okay.
Yeah, where contacts, not just any kind of contacts. How many times do you think police came in contact with you in 2019? Over the course of the year. Okay, give me a number. 150,000. Okay, 150,000. Anybody? Okay. How many people you think were killed by police, and how many you think? Here's a question that always astounds me: how many unarmed Black men do you think were killed by police in 2019? Man, give me a number. Give me a number.
One.
Okay. Cool. Okay.
Go higher than that.
I'm just saying, if one unarmed Black man was killed by the police, that's one too many.
Okay. I got a slide. Well, I told you, you jumping way ahead, but that's cool.
Give you a 900 or 1,000.
900 or 1,000. Okay, cool. And before we get there, I've heard numbers as high as 50,000, and I've heard numbers from 50,000 to 10,000, 5,000. So the numbers are what they are. So in 2019, there were 375 million police contacts in the United States. There were 10.1 million arrests. There were 56,034 officers assaulted. 8,400 of them were assaulted with a deadly weapon. 47,629 were assaulted by an unarmed subject. 995 people were killed by the police, 235 were black. There were between 9 and 14 unarmed black people killed by the police in 2019. Now, what was the point to this was the point to something with our groups was that if you look at social media and you look at the news, because we had a couple of young groups that came in, especially athletes. And what we're trying to express to them is that if you look at social media and you look at the news, well, only people you see dying at the hands of police officers are black people. That's the only one you see dying. But there has to be more because it said 995 people and 235. So there's other people that are being killed, but why is it that we're only seeing this group of people, right? So now we have to start looking at agendas and things like that. Because that's real too. That agenda thing is real. Because otherwise we would see all these other people that are being killed. Because they are being killed. The numbers say they're being killed. And by the way, those numbers come from the CDC. So the CDC has to log every death. Every death in this country goes to the CDC. And that's how we come up with those. That's how we come up with death numbers. Yes, ma'am.
Why don't we see them with the USA?
That's interesting. You should probably check on your news agency and ask them if any other groups of people get killed by the police. But I will say this. This is what we teach. The courts have not asked the police to be perfect. They have asked us to be reasonable. And while the number of perceived deaths as a result of officer-involved shootings is much higher than the actual number of deaths, the North Miami Police Department believes that one person is too many. I told you, I got something for you. I got something for you. Just be patient. We're going to get there. We're coming around the corner. We're going to get there. All right. The point is that, and we're going to get to our bigger belief, which is this. There are two ideas that guide defensive tactics and use of force instruction in the North Miami Police Department. Sanctity of human life. The belief that all human life is to be valued above all things. All human life is to be valued, and every effort should be made by law enforcement officers to preserve all life to whatever extent officers can safely do so. That is something that we teach in the sanctity of human life, and our critical decision-making model. That's in the center of our critical decision-making model. Is the sanctity of human life. The second thing that we teach is the right to do versus the right thing to do. Just because it's legally right to do, is the action the right one to take? Now, we have seen where courts have said that you can go out here and in this instance, you can shoot someone, you can deadly force on that person. And what I've shown you are the numbers that's in 2 different years where officers had the right to go out and commit far more, utilize deadly force far more times than they do, but they did because of restraint, because of training, because of discipline, number of things. And because some of them actually believe in the sanctity of human life. But they also believe that just because I have a right to do it doesn't mean that I should. Just because I have a right to do it doesn't mean I should do it. In 2015, no, I'm sorry, that's not you guys. So we talk about unarmed subjects. The Washington Post defines unarmed as the body as a weapon and blunt force weapons such as bats and clubs. That's what is considered unarmed, right? In 2014, 1 out of 5 murders were a result of being beaten. 3,100 out of 15,800 homicides were because of beating, strangulation, or forced drowning. Over 3,000 people each year are killed by unarmed assailants. Does unarmed mean not dangerous? Now, I'll take that and turn it back around, like you said. Some people would say unarmed doesn't mean dangerous, but one of those 3,000 people, they believe unarmed is dangerous because they're dead now. Now, between 2013 and 2015, how many law enforcement officers were killed by unarmed subjects by percentage? Take a guess. 5%? 5%? Anybody else? Anybody else? 5% too? Okay. Oh, in 2013, between 2013 and 2015, 11% of all LEOs murdered in the line of duty were killed by unarmed subjects. 5% were beaten to death, so you guys are right about that. But 6% had their service weapon taken from them and used against them. Is unarmed necessarily not dangerous? No, it's not. And that's why we have to be careful. Again, when we say unarmed people were killed, okay, let's dive a little bit deeper into this unarmed and see what are we talking about when we say unarmed? Or do we mean unarmed with like the Washington Post police with a bat? Because how many people here think somebody with a bat is unarmed? They're not dangerous. There's nobody in here who thinks that. But somehow or another, we take police officers, dehumanize them in the sense of, well, you shouldn't be afraid of that. Why should I be afraid of that? I don't want to die. My wife doesn't want me to die. My kids don't want me to die. My sister doesn't want me to die. So why would I not be afraid of it? So those are some things, perspective. And that's what really all of this kind of points to. This is the last thing I'm going to. Yes, this is my last thing. This is the last thing. This was a statement made by LeBron James. He said, we're literally hunted every day, every time we step foot outside the comfort of our homes. I hope, based on the numbers that you've been able to see today, that one or two things that you come up with. That this is obviously hyperbolic statements. These are either hyperbolic statements, or the police officers need a lot more training if they're out there hunting people every day and only coming up with 900 people out of 300 and something million people in this country.
I don't think it's so much the hunting. I think it's the feeling that you're being hunted.
But that's not what he said.
That's not exactly not what he said, but had he phrased it a different way, it might have made a difference. Because a lot of our young men do feel, they may not feel hunted, but there's the perception that if something happens, it's gonna be to them. I have a soon to be 33-year-old son who has locks, a red Camaro, tatted up, and he drives 55. And I'm like, I'm so glad you drive 55, because the perception. So it's all about perception. It's about where you stand in your skin. And that may be where he was standing at that particular day in his skin. Now, if he had thought about it and said it and thought about it and wasn't coming from a place of emotion, he may have said it differently. And I can see it once it's written out and I read it and I don't necessarily agree with it. However, if we have to know the context and what it was, which it was stated.
Let me ask you this.
He might have been in his feelings because somebody might have just been murdered.
Let me ask you this. You think LeBron James is being hunted every day he walks out the house?
No.
So and that's what it's just genuine. That's where people and this is part of the narrative, this is part of the agenda. Hey, I get clicks, I get likes, okay, cool. Okay. All right, you're on a gravy train, but are you really being hunted every day? Because let me tell you something.
I mean, if he went down to deep South Alabama, he might be, because they might not know who LeBron James is.
No, that's.
They're gonna know. But let me say this to you. Because I grew up in Liberty City. Went to Jackson, went to Alcott Middle School, went to Alcott Elementary, went to Kelsey Park, went all those places. And was there a strong belief in the police? Absolutely not. There was absolutely not a strong belief in the police. A tremendous distrust in the police. But you know what? Police ain't never did nothing to me. You know where I was getting my distrust and my disbelief from? From other people. So sometimes
Your perception is your reality.
your perception is your reality, but that perception does not be, but I can't think that's be the reality. And this is the thing that we just try to, the purpose of this is to try to bring us into some kind of common ground where we understand that, hey, listen, I understand that concept of driving a 55. I've had some experiences that were not pleasant, right? But I'm not going to sit here and say this either, because I know plenty of people who have never had an experience. They've never had an experience with the police. You ask them right now, you roll them in here, they've never had cross words with the police. They've never been on a traffic stop. They've never been nothing other than, I hate you. And for what? What did they do to you? What did they do to you? And that's where we have to, because this is where the bridge comes, and this is where all of these conversations come in. But, like I said, we open it up for everybody. I got you. Any questions, comments, concerns, complaints?
Who wants to go first?
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank
We're
you,
gonna
guys.
pick up
Appreciate
my
it.
vote.
Then, forward to you.
Thank you.
Who would
Thank
like
you.
to go first? First scenario. You can go first? Awesome. Anybody have to use the bathroom? Let us know, because there are locker room passages. I'll take it. We have water in the back. There's like a water. What? It's a locker room. So I have
Yeah, first.
Get a certain date.
Oh, I'm sorry.
First, sir.
Start with that.
How good do you get? Hey, Chida, what is our percentages right now?
Yes, sir. I don't think, no, I don't think.
Okay. All right, yeah, just,
Yeah, all right, no problem.
first, let's go.
You want to move back? You want to move?
As long as you ain't gonna do no Victor rolls or backflips or nothing like that. Listen, I've seen a lot of things happen here.
People-
Huh?
You're good.
That's what I'm saying, it might be some.
Just push your chair down. There you go.
That's all right.
He's like, now.
I've seen a lot of
We've seen him run back.
John Wick stuff, got the professional edition,
You got that?
so.
Can you see? Do I need to move?
Yeah, you slide that way just a little bit. There we go. Yeah.
Just this part right here. There you go, you ready to roll? All right. The screen is not gonna speak back to you. If there's any interaction that takes place, I'll give it to you. Move along, okay? If you want, just stand right here, so you're not behind the screen, you're right here, just keep in mind though. And in front, and we're good to go, all right?
We're letting you wait for backup before checking this guy out. What was the description on this guy again?
Be a white van. Open the back.
You pull laptop, all right, I'll let you see.
I didn't interact with the screen.
And I left my key and,
You can interact.
I left my key there in the hot and fire.
Yeah, I'm talking.
I left my key,
Do you live
in
here?
there. And,
Do you live here?
I guess I was downstairs to get another key, huh?
So did you see what he had in his hand?
No.
Well, that, right, well,
Well, I don't know, what did you?
it looked like, I didn't see anything. I mean,
Potato salad. It was a knife.
Oh,
It was a knife.
I didn't, well, I'm not even.
But let me answer your question. Why'd you pull out your gun so fast?
You know, I don't know, because in my mind, since we're here on the scene, right? Not gonna be about a problem.
Whatever you would say to all that?
Right. So, in my mind, I guess, I'm already thinking like, there's a crime that's being committed, so I pulled it out, thinking that maybe he's breaking in here.
So you mean you were working off a hunch?
Right.
Oh, that'll be.
Right.
But you saw how quick that was? Right. He was doing something, you hadn't even said a word, the gun was already in your hand. Right. Officer presence, right? Oh, that verbal. And then we go from there. Right. All right, always remember our presence first, we speak, and then we go from there. That Hulu sets it. All right. A little bit different now, huh?
You still up, or you guys play it?
You can switch it off.
Switch up.
If somebody wants to switch it off, then let's bring it up there.
Man's gotta play. Let's play.
Anybody else wants to play?
Come on, that's a play. I already know shot in there with the
Wow, is it like anybody?
You were,
I'm actually left.
you're left-handed? Well, you complicate my world.
That's
That's pretty normal for you lefties. Okay, so.
I have no 100% left.
How do you put it in your pocket?
You don't have pockets? Oh,
Pocket?
we'll use the pocket.
That's your holster.
I'm gonna go get some left-handed holsters after you. Left-handed people always complicate my day.
What can I say?
That's all right.
We're always in our right mind.
I think about all of the way.
Got it good. Got it good.
One 25 seconds, 125 seconds.
I'm dead.
But let me ask you a question. You did the same thing he did. You showed up, you said 2 words, guns in hand.
Yeah.
How come? Oh, they don't listen to your training officer because then he'll be in court with you.
You're right. You're
But you
right.
saw how quick that gun came out?
Yes,
And
because you
it's
don't know. Yes, I think that.
So let me ask you this. This isn't real right here.
Right.
When I walk into a car and somebody asks me, hey, why are you walking up with your gun?
Now I see why.
It's 12 o'clock at night.
Yeah. You don't know. You don't
Sometimes
know.
you hear that a lot. I mean, for myself, I made a car to work midnights for many years,
Right.
and you kind of walked up with it. Yes, come on over, ma'am. Don't worry about it. And we walk up, and that's the first. Why are you holding your gun?
Okay, now what I can see them doing more so is not actually holding the gun, but unclipping it.
Right. So
unsnapping
remember,
it,
this
and
has no
putting it-
retention. This has no retention. What we carry has triple retention.
What
So
is
you have
that?
to do 3 steps in order to remove your firearm out the holster. So everything he said time-wise, add those 3 steps to it. For retention.
Okay, those reset things, all on. That's it. And
It all depends. One of them is my thumb, my finger has to undo this. Well, first of all, the hood of the gun, I don't have any, do I have any? I don't believe I do, but there's a hood on it. I gotta push down the hood, push it forward. Then I have to press this button right here. Push it down, and then the firearm comes out.
Okay.
So I have to do all those steps prior to me pulling out my firearm.
that saves the 60 seconds compared to the.
It speeds it up compared to the, remember, bad guys have no retentions on their holster. They can pull.
Right.
I have to take all those steps in order to pull. Okay,
Right.
so it does,
And
Make-
remember, we don't push it forward, the actual top of the holster, because what if we get in a fight and they think are gonna kill us? So it's not like we can just prep for it in case something happens. No, we have to be proficient at all at once doing that motion.
so yeah, it does come with people today. Yeah, so I'm sorry, I have nothing for address. You're really complicated my head.
Hey, you know what?
Yeah,
Okay.
all right, have you ever used a firearm? I know you don't. Oh, yeah, they're heavy, so. No. So these are just as heavy as firearms that are loaded. You pull the trigger and that's how you're fine. Here you go. Just hold it. Just hold it down. I mean, I can't really do much. You're wearing a dress. There's not much I got.
You don't have a holster.
Yeah, so,
To your side.
all right, so just interact with the screen as you see fit, okay?
To them. Tell them hello. Good evening. What is your name?
Remember, de-escalate, speak to them.
All right, so what you're going to call right now, the call, basically somebody stealing copper wiring. That's all you got. Dispatch told you, hey, you're arriving. There's a guy in a red truck and he's stealing copper wiring. That's all dispatch gave you. That's what the complainant saw. That's all they got. Okay, so just talk to them when you get there. There you go. You see him stealing the copper wire. What do you say? You just showed up. Good police.
Hey, guy, what are you doing here? Stop, stop.
No, yeah. No, you see her position. Yeah, he was ready to sprint, he was ready to go. I thought you thought about the truck. No, but who saw the gun?
Yeah.
We fired it? We
Yeah.
shot it?
Yeah.
It,
But he was in retreat. So, no.
Yeah,
it all
but he can.
depends. So it all depends. It's based on articulation. If he aims it, could he drive away and continue firing?
Yes.
If he just displays it, maybe I'm more prone to getting a chase with this individual, because can he go out and hurt somebody else now?
Yeah.
So,
No. Chasing him would be to, I would intend to fire the gun in the tires. To stop the
all
car.
right, so that's a great thing. And our policy prohibits us from doing that. So we cannot do that. We cannot fire warning shots, nor can we shoot at car tires. Why? Because as the vehicle's moving, if I do not know how to shoot at a moving target, it's different. Not to mention, it is dangerous because then rounds can skip and they could hit somebody else. So that's why it's against our policy to do something like that. Okay?
But now,
Just,
my daughter,
No, I just.
yeah,
Okay, you good?
my,
Kevin, you wanna go?
Yeah. Take a shot. I gotta consider take a shot.
yeah, 3 examples of what.
Oh, not. Right, so we'll give you one more.
Oh, yeah, you got pants on, you made it, you never gonna get it.
Well, you know, yes.
Just slide this right in. To the side and again. It's heavy like the size of the protection. There you go. Think we got it. Sort of kind
I need to shoot that.
as long as it's some would hold, we can deal with it. Let it go. All right, there you go. Now we're ready.
This thing comes out.
It just goes right out. There you go.
You just shoot the TV screen.
You get the TV screen like arcade.
Yeah, all right.
There's like reactions. All right. During the evening shift and conducting a foot patrol in an area known for prostitution, drug sales. We talked to them.
How are we doing out there? No, we're fine.
Well, that's good. Here you go, that's a great thing, that goes back to the major was talking about tunnel vision. He was so focused on what she was saying that he did not even see what motion or reactions he was doing. So again, it does have human factors that go along with it. Why? Because we want to be polite. We want to speak to somebody, but for us, we have to be polite and vigilant in one. So it does get a little difficult sometimes. Yeah. Kind of change it. Thank you.
Anybody want to have one part? You want to?
Kevin, and you know, that's what really slows down the whole process. This is what gets into our reaction time. Because now I'm processing between her disarming me, she's mentally disarming me. And while I'm disarming, because the whole time while you were standing there, you were just like, even as you were getting shot, because she is so totally disarmed you. And this guy's over here lurking in the background with his gun, but you can't see him because your attention is here.
Yeah.
And this is also something else too, that when we talk about body-worn cameras, your attention was here because she was addressing you, but you're not seeing what's right here.
Yeah, I guess we consider.
Yeah, that's.
All right, here you go. Pocket.
You want?
My left-handed individuals. All right, ready? Sure.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm ready, I'm ready.
All right, you ready? Here we go. That's what we're going on.
No.
Top floor, and all to the right. Next, we've got a lot of calls from this place. What do I just see what's happening, absolutely. Crazy, everyone. We have.
There.
Here it's scary.
Making a corner.
Sure.
You might want to call.
Domestic.
Oh, look, there it goes.
Social media accounts. What is this the neighbors now? I'm talking about that, and I'm like, this one is nothing's going on and that end up making a break. No.
What's he doing?
It's not, it's just,
Where is he?
nothing's going on.
Can you call him and ask him to come inside?
Officer. Officer.
Okay. All right,
All
can you turn around? Around. Hand you back, thank you.
So, think of this for a second.
Yeah,
Let's get really realistic.
yeah.
If you just saw somebody run out there with an AR-15, are you gonna talk to them when you're going on the side? But you see how you, but you did. But you did it. But here you go, so here you go, you don't have to be a police, and I'm glad you said that, because everybody says that to us a lot. Oh, but I don't have the training you guys do. You're right, you don't, but do we wanna defend ourselves?
Okay, let me tell you this. I went to a shooting range one time and I couldn't shoot the target because they were shaped like human beings. So I don't think that I'd be able to, I intrinsically, I don't think that I could. I mean, if I had to protect my home, no.
But kids. How old's your child?
33.
33. If I laid this down here. And your child was getting beaten to death,
Yes, I'm a shooter.
there you go. Why?
That's my child.
Motherly instinct kicks in, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. So sometimes this is the difference between me or any of my partners here going to see our kids. How many kids do you have?
Twins.
Twins. Twins. Well, there you go. You got twins, so you'd be going double the shoot.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's what I want you guys to understand. That deep down inside, none of us want to do this, like the mayor said. But there's always something out there.
Yeah.
That will force us to do this. Be it protect myself, protect my partner, or protect any of you all. And I've seen you guys once, twice, and you got 3 individuals in here that are willing to lay down their lives for you. You never met us. So now think of that for a second. And we got to make that decision in a split second. A split second can mean the difference of you guys going home and me going home, or being somewhere else in a hospital. So, yes, we have to make those decisions. Yes, the training we have is extremely high level. We try to make it as realistic as possible, like the major said. And it does get difficult for us because we're trying to make it as realistic as possible, but it can't be militaristic, really. Okay, so yes, where everybody says, I will not, there is always one reason that they will. Because the whole time, no, I brought up the kids, how fast was that? Absolutely. So I want you guys to realize that. Yes. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay, you're gonna shoot at the limbs.
But you're like, okay, it's not gonna be last more.
It is strong, very strong.
Yeah, the whole. For this one, you don't even need a holster. See those big things?
Yeah.
Make them go from side to side. There you go. This is all you need to do.
Oh. Way to.
Yeah, you got it. Now that is a lot bigger than a lift, but yeah, I understand officers are afraid. But this is how difficult it can get.
And that's standing still.
Oh, you got one. All right, this could go on forever, so we'll decide there. This could go on forever. But it's just to show you all that it can get a little difficult trying to hit a target. And like the major said, nobody's moving. Standing still.
All right, so let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you all, Major. I think it was an amazing experience. Mr. Chair, any final words you want to share with the group?
Definitely, thank you guys so much for taking the time out to put this incredible presentation before us. Obviously, give us somewhat of a more real life experience of what our officers go through. I know who I really appreciate it. Definitely be more mindful about it. Well, I appreciate it so much. Anybody else, any words?
No, thank you. You're good.
And stimulants like we live in.
All right,
Well, thank you.
And here's what I thought I did have one. I do have one for host.